Peace, God.
Hey, Dad. He's so good.
Hey, man, I got you a new book.
A new book?
Check it out. Check it out. Let me know how you like it. I'll be back. Man, this Bitcoin, this Ethereum ain't doing nothing for me right now, man. Gotta find some new investments.
Peace, God. What you doing?
Peace, God. Good.
I think this book is kind of inappropriate.
Inappropriate? What's up with it?
It's inappropriate because look at these.
LGBT. Oh, man, I'm sorry about that, God.
I accept your apology.
Man, it's a shame, man. You can't even find no decent books for you nowadays without having to have these difficult conversations.
I have an idea. Maybe
that?
we should make a series of our own book.
A book series? That is a good idea.
7 volumes.
7, I get it. 7 volumes. What should we call it?
7 the Super Hey
7 the Perfect. 7 the Super Hey Rule.
And then maybe we could even make some bundles of it once we get to volume 3.
Oh, see, now you're thinking like a businessman. I like that idea, man. A foundational Black American children's series.
Perfect.
Visit www.godcastbooks.com and pre-order your book today.
Yeah, like that. Let's see what's in the God's mind. Listen.
Peace, family. What's good? We are live. Welcome to another episode of Sincere Love the Godcast. And this is another special edition. I'm not here with my co-host, Nicely Girl, this Sunday. We usually do this on Sundays where we have our current event space. We talk about other issues that we feel are important to Black society. But this is a special edition of Sincere Love the Godcast today. And I got a couple of special guests here with me. And we're going to be talking about Hip Hop 50. And we're going to be analyzing the myths and the mythos around the history of hip hop and the way it has been told, especially since we just passed August 11th. There's been a lot of celebrations, commemorations going on surrounding the origins of hip hop. And, from my perspective and from the perspective of my guests, there's a lot of false narratives being put out there, some straight up lies. And we're going to get into all of that today. So welcome, family, to the Godcast. Make sure you hit the like button as you're coming up in here. Share this out. Let everybody know that we are live right now on Sincere Love the Godcast, and we're going to be chopping up some good game. Let me see. Make sure I'm not forgetting to announce anything before we get started. I know we got the Black Business Showcase coming up this week, but I'm not sure who our guest is going to be. But if you're subscribed to the channel and you click the notification bell, then you will be notified whenever we go live with new episodes. So stay tuned for that as well. And so let me let y'all know who we got, man. I don't want to waste too much time getting this thing started. Let me let y'all know who we got on the set today. We got my brother, Adika Butler. Adika Butler, author of The Homie and Modern the Homie.
That's cool.
And amongst other books, right? That's not the only book you got out there, right?
Indeed.
And also we got my brother, Dwan B., music historian, stand-up comedian, drummer, all type of stuff. All type of stuff my brother got going on. So how y'all doing, man? Welcome to the Godcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate you for inviting me onto the show and having such dope ass guests with us, man.
Absolutely, man. It's an important conversation. I'm glad that y'all took the time to be here with me today. Most likely the Black Dot is going to be pulling up on us at some point as well, family. So again, make sure that y'all doing all the YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. And so I'm gonna start with you, brother Adika, because I know you're limited on time. The question that I want to start the conversation off with is, what is hip hop? What does it mean to you? Before we even get into how it started and all of that, just what is hip hop, the essence of it?
I mean, for me, when I think about hip hop, I'm thinking about something that is an art form. It has many different facets to it. It involves dance, it involves music, it involves various forms of visual art. But in my mind, it is a mirror reflection of how we emulate natural processes that can be observed within nature and throughout the cosmos. So when you talk about one aspect of hip hop, which is the role of the MC, which is the master of ceremony who moves the crowd, the sun, which is at the center of our solar system, has been moving crowds for millennia. You know what I mean? It's been getting flowers open, getting plants open. When we step outside, we feel that radiance rise within us. So the sun is, the original MC of our solar system. When you look at the principle of call and response, I say hip, you say hop, hip, hop, hip, hop. That's a mirror reflection of like the principle of duality. If you have masculine, you have gender. You have masculine, you have the feminine aspect. You go in, you go out. Call and response. It's a reflection of a natural process. So it's really how we use sight, sound to reflect the different presentations of what we've been observing for centuries in the natural world and what we've been observing in the cosmos. So hip hop is a reflection of that. We've captured it in a lot of different ways, and I think that there are more ways that it can be captured. But to even go into the political aspect of it, I think that it is definitely the most successful attempt to actualize and manifest the philosophy of Pan-Africanism. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at the culture of what has become hip hop in the modern sense of how we understand it, because as I said, hip hop is something that has pretty much like always existed. It's just that we in the last 50 years or so have taken on specific ways of conveying certain principles, certain ideas, certain concepts, but it's existed for a long period of time. So when you look at the political aspect, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it wasn't for Blacks who are in North America. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for the contributions of Black people coming out of Jamaica. And I know there's a lot of like conversation back and forth. Well, who started it? Who's the sole force behind all of it? We all contributed to it. And it's a manifestation of that Pan-African ideology out of many one people. We've all put forth different elements. We've all put forth different perspectives that have helped to enhance the experience of all that what we call hip hop is, and the world loves it. It's probably the most significant cultural phenomenon that the world has seen in the last century. So that's how I see hip hop in a nutshell.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate that, brother. And we got our brother just pulled up to the set, the Black Dot.
Peace, family.
Peace. What's going on, Black Dot? How you, man?
Peace.
Everything is well. Peace to the brothers.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Trying to see what's the best look here. That's a little bit better. All right. So that should be good. So I skipped something before I asked that question. I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to let everybody know who you are, so people know who's speaking. So let everybody know who you are real quick, Adika, and then we'll go around, and then we'll get back to that question that I just asked for Black Dot and Dwan B.
Indeed. So my name is Adika Butler. I am an author of multiple books. My latest is The Homie and Modern The Homie, which pretty much details my experience of visiting the country of Benin in West Africa, which is the foundation of what we understand as the Vodun religion. So I went there. I met with various priests, practitioners. I had a lot of experiences there that I thought was relevant and highly significant to the larger diaspora of Black people, and I put it all in a book form. And it's been getting like some great feedback. I've been getting some great feedback from it for the year that it's been out. Black Dot is, like one of the like first people to, cop it when it came out. So, I'm just really appreciative of, how the book has been going and just the experience overall. And, that's pretty much what I do. I do other things as well. I'm a certified chef. I'm a creative consultant. I recently executive produced the first of many hip hop albums that I've ever worked on. So I'm a creative person who's expanding and still exploring his creativity in my old age.
Indeed. Now we appreciate that. I'm on the same type of time. Old as I am.
Indeed.
I'm old as hell. But Dewan B, let everybody know who you are, brother.
All right, Dewan Brown, Dewan B for short. Yeah, I do everything. I got my YouTube show. I'm a drummer. I've been played the drums in church for 20 years. I say de facto music historian because I never thought I would be one. I just figured everybody knew what I know because I've been studying this since I was like 6. Always into it. Ever since I taught myself how to play the drums, I was just into music. So when I started talking, I thought I was saying shit everybody knew. I didn't know it was, So that's what. So I got given the title of music historian. To me, I'm just a nerd that love music. Stand-up comedian. We sold out again last night at Tariq's Hidden History Museum, and I smashed that motherfucker.
Salute.
Killing them. And I improv my jokes. Top of the head. Let's go. Because hip hop and stand-up comedy come from the same root. That's American jazz and blues, but we'll get into that. And so I do that. I'm also a certified cardologer. I talk about things from the natural historic point of view, but I can also pull the cards on you and tell you where it really comes from spiritually. And so we will be talking about that a little bit when it comes to hip hop and Black music. I've been working with kids here in South Central LA since 1995, away from the internet. I'm well known here in LA from either being the fat nigga that can hoop or the nigga that was always just around working with the kids from South Central to the jungles. You know what I mean? So, so I do a lot of stuff, man. I'll be forgetting to tell half of it. So go to DewanB.com for all that shit.
Yeah, no doubt. And my brother, the Black Dot, for those that don't know, let them know who you are, brother.
Peace. Writer, author, poet, MC, someone who loves the culture. It's a father, grandfather, now husband, friend, all of the above of those things. And someone who likes to contribute and get in where it fits in when we have these conversations about culture, about, spirituality, metaphysics, occult, astrology, things of those natures that I can touch on and add just my insight. I choose to do so. Now content creator and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, indeed. And for those that don't know, some people may be tuning in that don't know who I am Sincere Love to God. I'm a father. I'm an MC. I'm a content creator as well. I'm the founder of Godcast Enterprises. We do the Godcast here a few times a week. We cover different important topics pertaining to what's going on in Black society. Also now author of a children's book, Seven's Big Move, the first volume of what's going to be a 7-volume series, Seven the Superhate Rule, children's book based on my son and, my relationship with my family, and he's the star of the show. But you guys can get that at godcastbooks.com. Go to godcastbooks.com. You guys could get the children's book as well as some of the merch that we got over there and all of that stuff too. And so we do stuff like this, what you see here now, man. We have these type of important conversations. And so the question that I asked before you came on, Black Dot, was what is hip hop? Before we get into the history and who started it and all of the other stuff, what is hip hop? What are we talking about? You can go first, Black Dot.
I'm going to say when we name things, sometimes we destroy them or we give people an opportunity on the outside of the frequency to latch onto the frequency to find out how they can find their place within that. And so for me, what hip hop is what it always was. A medium or a series of mediums that we use to express ourselves. So whether that's the drum, which is the first drum, of course, being the heartbeat, which synchronizes us to this specific frequency. And then we externally created drums to wood and other things to pound on. And then it evolved into us not having access to a drum physically. So hip hop came about in the sense of using whatever was available to suspend a drum. And that's where we get a break beat from. And so being able to suspend a break beat when you don't have actual drums to give the drummer some is how the ingenuity came in when we talk about an urban DJ. And so early on, we had DJs who played the entire record. You know, you get to a party, you play the entire record, and then there was always that anticipated part where the drummer got some, or the break came in, or an opportunity to get loose, or you knew it was coming. What happened was once that break played, certain DJs began to notice that the crowd was going extra crazy, and so came up with ways to suspend it. And in order to suspend it, you had to have a certain skill set, because sometimes that break might have been 7 seconds. And if you didn't know how to put two turntables together with a crossfader and sort of cheat and anticipate so that they could be in rhythm, it was impossible to do. And so this is where we come up with the DJs who remove themselves from traditional DJs who have been around forever. So when people say Quirk started hip hop, let's just start there. We understand that's almost impossible to say, because DJs have been around forever. You know what I mean? Putting records on where people come out and jam. What he was attempting to do after witnessing these people going crazy, he was attempting to extend a part of a record. He didn't have the skill set really. So when he did something called the merry-go-round, so he would play it, and then he would try to put on another record that had a breakbeat and play it, but it was always offbeat. It was off kilter. He was a terrible DJ. I just want to add that into the mix, into the lexicon. But I'm gonna keep it moving, so we don't take too long with this. And so, but the breakbeat is critical because it gave birth to you being able to, as a b-boy, have an extended period to get down and do your move or up rock and pop without an extended breakbeat. It couldn't happen. It also gave ways for the oracle, you know what I'm saying? Again, another way that we've been speaking in rhythm and rhyme for years, to be able to have a way to put rhyme together to those beats that extended, right? So breakbeat is the foundation of those things. The fourth element of so-called hip hop is graffiti, which we know writing and graphs have been around for eons, and it's a way we use to express ourselves. And we say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and you can read it up, you can read it down, sideways. So those became the elements that were, I think, almost realigned due to the subtraction of certain elements, where they took the art out of classroom, they took the instruments out of the classroom, and certain things. And we started doing something, and we didn't call it anything. We were just jamming in the park, having a good time. Once we named it, it gave it form. And once it became form, I think the rest is history in terms of the co-optness of those who was able to co-opt this. So when I think of hip hop, I think of earth, air, fire, water. I think of elements that have always been around, that have been used for us to take the unseen and make it seen and manifest things within a physical reality. And so that's where we get it from a metaphysical standpoint. And on the physical, it became the graffiti, the b-boy, the DJ, the MC, and so on. And the rest, as we know it, began to expand out, in which once we put it on record and signed those terrible contracts to pituitary within the universe, and we lost all control. And so I think the four basic elements of our DNA strand You know, the four basic ones became those four elements right there, and we begin to braid them and weave them back together in certain points of urban areas, which we were, as a gift from our ancestors, to sort of realign ourselves. And then someone came in and put a hack, a splice, and co-opted what would have been natural progression for us to rise up out of the situation we're in. That would be the best way I can explain that, you know.
It's a great breakdown, brother. And the way I say it kind of simplifies everything that you just broke down. Hip hop is our cultural expression of our collective consciousness. You know what I'm saying? In the form of MCing, breaking, graffiti, DJing, street knowledge, street fashion, and street entrepreneurialism. You know what I'm saying? That's my simplified breakdown of what hip hop is. What is hip hop, brother Dewan B?
It's hip hop. The word, what they call hip hop, is just white folks' way. It's just a way for white folks to learn an aspect of our culture. That's hip hop is an extension of Black American culture. It's hip hop is a branch on the tree, a beautiful tree that we've created here uniquely on this land over the last 400 years, with respect to everyone else. Because like a lot of times when we have these conversations, people can tend to say, "Hey, it's disrespectful." I love world music. Follow my Instagram. I was at the Hollywood Bowl on last Friday night watching Ruben Blades. I don't know how many people spend $200 on box seats to see Sergio Mendes and these people when they come to town. You know, I appreciate the world's music, but we did something uniquely special here in North America with our sound, because we have our own vibration, our own thing, and we reacted to our conditions in our own way, because music is a sonic interpretation of your environment. And so what's going on in your environment is what you're sonically, as a musician, you're reinterpreting. So hip hop is one of the newer forms of Black American culture, and one of the newer influences on Black American culture and Black music around the world. Because hip hop, when you really study the breadth of our music, hip hop is no more influential than what swing was in the 30s, than what disco was in the 70s, than what Motown was in the 60s. We do this every decade. I mean, we come up with a new sound that the world takes, and hip hop is one of the newer iterations of that. Just as strong, we created hip hop at the same time we created house music. You know what I mean? House is, and depending on what world you're in, EDM is just as big of a culture as hip hop is, depending on your environment. We created rock and roll. Depending on your environment, rock and roll is bigger than hip hop. Whatever environment you're in musically, it's a house that Black people created. So hip hop is the biggest environment to us, because hip hop is the environment that we as Black people chose to hold on to. We chose to get rid of country music, but is it any less influential than hip hop? We chose to get rid of heavy metal, but is it any less influential than hip hop? We chose to get rid of house, techno, EDM, but are those cultures? Neo soul is a major culture in Japan. You know what I mean? In Europe, it's like whatever we create and what it is. So when it comes down to hip hop, alluding to what Black Dot said, that was at a time to where the live instrumentation was taken away from us. So what hip hop did was it preserved the funk, it preserved the sound, it brought up and it used the sound of funk, because if you look at hip hop culture, what we call culturally, it's funk, it's bebop. You can mirror bebop and hip hop, you know, from its inception, how they came in, how they came into play, revolutionary music. Swing had gotten white, you know, too white. You know, they were calling Benny Goodman the king of swing when everybody knew it was Count Basie and Duke Ellington. You dig what I'm saying? And so, but swing had gotten white. But Basie's now doing music for what's his name, Frank Sinatra, and he's doing music for Tony Bennett. You know what I mean? And so the young folks like, fuck that. Then here come the sound came bebop. Bebop was a resistance music. They got rid of those loud suits and brought in the double-breasted, single-tie, black brim glasses. Brought in that, what's up, cat daddy language? Its own lingua franca. It was resistance, you know what I mean? It was resistance. If you go back to Max Roach's album, he had an album called It's Time in 1960, saying it's time to shake this shit up and burn this shit on fire. Bebop used to be ahead of the curve like hip-hop. So when we look at the two cultures and put them side to side, we're literally looking at father son, you know. And so what you see when you're talking about the blues, country music, hip hop, EDM, disco, funk, whatever you want to call it, they're all forms of resistance music that Black Americans created with our own beat, and centered around our drum. And I'm gonna say this before I end it out: the drums are indigenous to Earth. Africa, of course, Africa had the drums first, but China got drums, Korea got drums, South, everybody got drums. What we did with hip hop, what we did with the funk, what we did with jazz, we revolutionized the drums. And like Black Dot said, the music starts with the drum. Everybody, it's like everything's a vehicle. You have airplanes, you have trains, you have cars, you have boats. They're all vehicles, right? Drum to drums. What the North American Black did with the drums that separates hip hop as a genre away from anywhere else in the world is we came up with what's known as the drum set. The drum set, kick drums, snare, hi-hat. That is a different function than any drum in the world. When you go, when I was listening to Ruben Blades past Friday, plenty of beautiful drums up there with the hands. When you play hand drums with the drums, the music floats. When you bring the drum set in, and I bring it in on the one, God damn it, music surrounds around that. And it brings in a different feeling, a different energy. And when we invented the drum set, D.D. Chandler, 1896, out of New Orleans, first drum set ever documented. That's in the Smithsonian. The drum set itself changed the beat of the world. And what it did was the putting things on the one, putting things on that, what that does is it brings everything together. It brings a continuity. Because rap is old. We was rapping on wax in the 20s and 30s, but rapping over swing kind of sound weird. Even the mixing. When we talk about DJ culture, what they were doing in parts is what DJs like Frankie Crocker and Jocko Henderson were doing on the radio in the 50s. Jocko Henderson was extending break beats and rapping in the 60s, in the 50s, in order to announce the station identification. So these are all things that are all cultural elements that we were just doing, minding our own goddamn business. You dig what I'm saying? And within that, we are open to sharing culture. People have come together, and then other groups have come together, and they have flowered it beautifully, and they've done beautiful things with it. But what we call hip hop, what we call Black music, is something that's uniquely, distinctly found here. And when you see the bandstand, because the music is all about the bandstand, drums, bass, keys. When you see drums, bass, keys, whether that be live or through an 808 and a machine, that is the North American distinct sound that the rest of the world, once they've interfaced with it, they've adopted. So hip hop is just our most recent iteration of changing the world.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed, man. Great breakdowns, man, from everybody, man. This is getting heavy already. And so the next thing I want to get into is this hip hop 50 celebration. I want to know how everybody feels about this 50th commemoration of hip hop. You know, the way the story is told, hip hop started in 1973 at a party that was thrown by Kool Herc and his sister, back to school party in the Bronx, Cedric Ave. You know, that's the way that the story is told. The way that a lot of y'all or all three of y'all really kind of alluded to how these elements already existed prior to that, and just hip hop is just the new iteration of all of that. And so, there's, in my opinion, there's a like I titled this video, there's a myth around the origins of hip hop. It's a mythos, and to me, that's not the same thing as a lie, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It could be a good thing, but the way things have been progressing, especially surrounding this 50th anniversary, I started to question whether this mythology of the origins of hip hop is more harmful or more beneficial, because myths are usually used to simplify something that is difficult to explain. You know what I'm saying? You take archetypes and different characters and you simplify what took place in the history in order to pass it down so that anybody could understand it. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But the way things are being pushed now, I feel like it's causing a lot of confusion that needs to be cleared up. So, Adika, how do you feel about all the celebration and commemoration that you see surrounding this 50th anniversary of hip hop? And what is your take on the origin?
I mean, just to get to, right to the point of it, I look at a lot of it as, pretty much, just a byproduct of capitalism. You know, Black Dot had already mentioned how, when you name something and when you say, oh, it's called this or it's called that, you kill it. But what capitalism does is it takes something that is a natural product of human ingenuity and creativity, it gives it a name, right? And then by giving it that name, you can sell it and you can engage in like consumerism culture by saying it's called this, it was born on this particular day. You have to make it something finite because the capitalist model, as far as how we've known it up to this point, it's not able to sell something that is totally dynamic and totally godly. You have to kill it or make it something less than what it originally was so that you can dumb it down and then sell it to millions of people who may not even be able to what it
Uh-oh.
is for.
You broke up a little
Is
bit right
everybody
there.
back?
Repeat the last part you just said. You broke up a little bit.
Yeah, so I look at, the whole 50th anniversary thing is, just pretty much a reflection of that. It's a way of selling something to like millions of people and making sure that, the revenue that's surrounding the commodifiable aspects of the culture is still rolling in. Do I think it's a bad thing necessarily? No, I think it offers an opportunity for people to engage in conversations like what we're having right now about what hip hop is, what it could be, what it hasn't been. It gives us an opportunity to like talk to our children, our grandchildren about what hip hop is. So it's something to rally around in terms of human conversation. It's something for people to talk about. It's something for people to have like great, beautiful events and concerts and different social functions. I mean, we summertime, people want to engage each other and get out and meet and congregate. That's human nature. So I understand that aspect of it, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? I don't think we can say that hip hop is 50 years old when we understand what hip hop is.
So is the myth harmful or is it harmless?
It can be harmful if you don't understand capitalism and how capitalism pulls things in and then takes it apart and then recombines it in a way that that no longer serves the people who actually gave life to the art form. I think it can be dangerous in that respect. But I'm sure that even with everything that we're saying about this 50-year celebration, that there is good dialogue that is coming out of it. I think that there are conversations being had, not just on this platform, but across the world, that is life-giving and life-affirming and helping people come to greater understandings of what hip-hop truly is. So to answer your question, is it harmful or harmless? It depends on the consciousness that you already have that you're bringing to the conversation. And if you're not bringing any consciousness to the conversation, then it's just another engagement, another exploration of mass consumerism. But if you're like the brothers who I've been, like listening to right here, Dwan B, Black Dot, and yourself, I think that it's a life-giving and life-affirming thing because we're having this conversation at this time. We're not having it. We didn't have this conversation 4 months ago, and it's not a conversation that's 4 months later. We're having it today in light of everything that's happening with the festivities surrounding the 50 years of hip hop. So it's what you make it.
Yes, indeed. Same question for you, Dwan B.
I think it's I look at it on a couple levels. The way they're putting it out is harmful because what they're doing is they're othering. They're doing they're trying to do what they did with all other forms of our music, where you ignore the actual black person that created this wrinkle and give it to somebody else. My thing is Fat Joe. Where did he come from? He was never he made a cool song, but he was never somebody. People was like, oh, Fat Joe. How is he now the representative of hip hop? Why is he here? Then I look at it from the historical point of view. And again, this goes back to my show when I was at the Hollywood Bowl this past Friday. Ruben Blades is a Latin Afro-Cuban musician out of Panama. And he did a mural on this show, and this ties into hip hop. And why Fat Joe, from my perception, why Fat Joe is being used to other hip hop and say it's 50-50 Latino. And they have these shows that they're putting out there and stuff where they talk about the influence, and Amazon did a show talking about some Latinos created it. Why are they doing this? We all got to ask why. And then who's doing it? Okay, white folks know that, we forewalled this. The only black white person that ever got let into our house was Eminem. And I'm ready to kick his ass out. But outside of that, we forewalled this pretty well. So they understand they can't bring in a white presence yet. So the best thing they can do is bring in a blackish presence, a blackish. And where does Fat Joe comes from? When I was at this Latin jazz concert this past Friday night, they had a memorandum of all the great Latin jazz artists. And what you'll see a black, lighter, white. It's like, the primary influences. And usually on Saturdays, I go to Latin Jazz Saturdays at the LA County Museum of Art. And they'll give love to Tito Puente. They'll give love to all these different lighter skinned artists, but the black people who created it, they're ignored. I mean, I go to Latin concerts. I would probably say music out of Latin America. I would say upwards of 20 to 30 concerts a year I go to, in that genre, because I love it so much. But you never hear them mention Machito, who came from Cuba to New York in 1940 and created what's known as Afro-Cuban music, with only he and his Cuban brothers, and the rest of the horn section was out of Chick Webb's band, Savoy Ballroom, New York City. Black Americans created what's known as a Latin sound with the horns. Dizzy Gillespie, the first Latin jazz album, Manteca, 1954. You never hear him mentioned. You never hear Horace Silver mentioned, Herbie Hancock's cousin out of Connecticut. You never hear these people mentioned. When it came to the whole Latin sound, you have the forefathers of that. Dizzy Gillespie, Horace Silver, Charlie Parker, Thelonious Monk. These were the people that created that sound that the Latins were taking and from. And we listen to the original class, the original Tito Puente, yeah, I love these niggas. That's what Machito, yeah, it's the black folks. Now, when you go to a Latin jazz concert, you'll never know it was us. Not only us, you'll never know it was the North American black that created that sound if you let them tell a story. So who are these people that they're trying to split hip hop with? Because it's 50-50 now. What is it in 20 years? That's the danger of of what they're doing right there from that level. But with the danger, there's also beauty. And it's beautiful, because I wasn't even thinking, I told you, I wasn't even thinking about doing no music documentary and talking music and all this shit. Man, I be cracking jokes when I be on stage, And then when I do speak, I come from working with kids. So I have whole curriculums on how to teach racism to your children. I have a book called Tell It Like It Is, The Art of Loving Communication. My degree is in comm studies. I was more so on that vibe, and I still am on that vibe. Because when I would talk music in 2015, when I would say, I would say, you can look at tweets I have from 2012. I'll be like, you hip hop niggas, y'all better come back home to Mama Blues and Father Jazz, because you're a feral child out there left alone. And if we keep hip hop out there alone, these white folks gonna take that shit. Hip hop needs to go back to his parents, be with his brother Funk and his sister Disco, because they were all created in that same pocket of time by Mama Jazz and Father Blues. And it all comes from our soul. And if hip hop don't recreate with Mama, I have tweets saying this shit 10 years ago, 3 likes. Now you're seeing this assault on our history, and black folks, we tired of this shit. You know what I mean? We're tired of this. We're tired of them taking our stuff. Like, it's like people may not understand how black Americans feel, because we've created so much. Going back to the Fisk Jubilee singers of the 1860s, influencing what was going on in Russia. That's how deep this goes with us. Scott Joplin, when it goes to Louis Armstrong, how you gonna talk about somebody else influencing hip hop and you not bring up Pops? Black Americans we don't know who Louis Armstrong, what he really did. We don't understand Fats Waller and what he did for hip hop. I heard when I was on, Busta Rhymes was on the Breakfast Club and saying that, no disrespect to Jamaican culture, but he was saying Jamaican culture is where toasting comes from. Pull up the song called The Milkman, 1934. Fats Waller talking about the milkman, basically the milkman smashing his wife. And it's a whole song in jest. And if you watch Fats Waller play, he plays with these strokes where he be smiling. If you ever see the Nicholas brothers dance when they're dancing up and down, you ever see that clip with the Nicholas brothers when they're flipping and dancing? Greatest dance scene in history. Well, if you in the very first part of that scene, you see someone playing the piano like in a funny kind of way that's Fats Waller. He died a couple years after that. He died young. We don't understand what B.B. King's influence. We don't understand P.D. Wheatstraw. And P.D. Wheatstraw, we think is a character from Dolomite. Dolomite, that was actual blues artist in the 1930s that was outselling Robert Johnson, the person that white people accredit, and he was still black too, for being the father of the blues. This web goes so deep, and these people lived. They have actual lives. And all this stuff, when people talk about some honoring ancestors, the reason why I'm so on this so heavy, dog, and I don't, again, it's not to offend nobody else, but before I honor my distant ancestors, I got to honor grandmama. You know, I got to honor the music that got grandmama through this shit. I got to honor the music that got my great-grandparents through this shit. And these people lived. My grandfather died at 98 years old last year. And one of the last stories he told me was, he said back in the 1940s, Count Basie used to practice in his living room. I never knew that. You know what I mean? And Count Basie, if for hip-hop people to not understand who Count Basie is, and part of the reason why hip-hop is going through what it's going through right now, hip-hop never really respected its elders like that. You dig? So now its elders are being disrespected. And all these hip-hoppers are allowing Melly Mel to be left out there alone. But, you know, I'm going to get to that. I'll get to going too much. Let me, that was enough. I got to hear what Black Dot say, because Black Dot, brother, I love you, man.
You wonder why we call you the historian, brother. This is why. This is why, man. You got so much in there, man. You got so much in there. And so, Black Dot, man, I see the tall, dark, and handsome shirt. I see the shirt you got on. You know, you're one of the OGs in this hip hop game, one of the unsung heroes in this hip hop game. What's your take on this whole 50th anniversary thing and the mythos surrounding it? Harmful, harmless? Break it down for us.
It's sort of bittersweet, and because I understand reference points. And as we mentioned, mythos, sometimes a reference point when you're telling a story, it needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so, sort of like saying Rosa Parks started the civil rights movement, when we know that's not true. But it gave it a reference point for them to begin the movement. So, and me being from walking distance from Cedar Park, all right? I hit Cedar Park in 1977. Right. So the reason I tell people I don't do the history thing, because as a 10-year-old, I wasn't looking from a historical perspective for anything. I just was in the park watching something that I had never seen before. I was in the park experiencing, you know what I'm saying, still the early stages of it, but had never seen. And before I got to the park, I had already heard the legend of Kool Herc. I'm trying to put this in perspective. He had already had a legend. Yo, we got to go to Cedar Park because Kool Herc and the Herculoids are playing. And it sounded comic book like who the fuck is Kool Herc and the Herculoids? You know what I mean? And I could hear his system 6 blocks away. And so my mother said, you better not leave this block. But I had to go because, you know what I mean? My boys were going and we was all just going to get an ass whipping. And so from a 10-year-old kid's perspective, this man was 15 feet tall, even though he was only 6'3", 6'4". And I wasn't into the technical aspect of where he was getting his music from, because I want to say this. I heard somebody put up a statement that said, where would hip hop be without its Caribbean influence? And I had to correct them and say, no, where would Caribbeans be without our influence on what they were doing? Because I didn't know break beats or breakdancing started in Jamaica. I didn't know graffiti started in Jamaica. I didn't know putting words together in rhymes started in Jamaica. And I didn't know b-boying or a DJing with two turntables started in Jamaica. And to listen to Herc himself tell the story, he learned these things while he was here. And the way he dressed, he had to get rid of his attire because we were goofing on him. You know what I'm saying? Because he looked out of place. And so I have to put that into the record because, you know, you hear this narrative, even with Busta Rhymes saying we have no culture, and yet his very teachings of the nation of gods and earths is from Clarence 13X, which gave him his whole lifestyle, which is a fundamental Black American. So I'm a little confused. And then the hottest record, not doing Jamaican chant. So you also conformed. I grew up around Jamaicans in that era, and they wanted to wear British Walkers, Shams, the Baron shirts, AJ's overlaps to look like us because girls in the school were clowning. So when we talk about conforming, they're the ones who were doing the conforming. Now, with that being said, that does not mean that there weren't, once they immersed themselves in our culture, or finding ways that they can find, you know, something to have an impact on the culture. But we want to put that into the record books. So when we start speaking 50 years out, and then when I looked at all of the corporate parasites who jumped on this and got out in front of this and usurped all of the energy out of what would have been a way to honor a few young men and women who realigned us. Because we're talking about realignment. You know, we go through these phases where we lost our connection to jazz. We lost our connection to bebop, maybe through environmental circumstances. And we got into, and then these elements came about, which kind of realigned us so we can get back on track. I like to look at 1988 in particular, when we had Public Enemy, Brand Nubian, X-Clan, Poor Righteous Teachers, who were at least trying to connect the music to some history. You know what I'm saying? Having us culturally get back to who we were, and then what happened after that. So the last 30 years have been an atrocity in corporate takeover and co-opness to what would have been the natural progression. You want to know about the unknown, you study the known. And if you take a snapshot of Public Enemy, you had a voice. We're talking vibratory frequency. You had a voice in Chuck D who was instructing you. You had a sound, right, from the Bomb Squad that was agitating and adding an energy of let's go do it. You had an image of Professor Griff showing you us how we can militarize, you know what I'm saying, our struggle. And you even had the jester in Flavor Flav, who was to throw off common enemies, and the jester's the one who gets closest to the king. You had all of that in one goddamn group. The archetype of that, if left alone, where we could have progressed musically to learn our history, to connect, because one story being told, don't get it twisted, it's one full story, but there'll be breaks in that story because there's a parallel universe running of those trying to screw us over and disconnect us. But while we're trying to put the pieces to the puzzle back together, there are those who are trying to keep putting hacks within that so we don't make the connection. And then the rest became about partying and bullshit and selling liquor and selling a lifestyle and connecting this to prisons and our women with credit cards down the crack of their ass and the history. And so my only issue is this, I'm get off it. There are those of us who are trying to celebrate the beginning when we had something that had potential, and I didn't see a lot of them get promoted. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, I talked to some of the elders who said when they was bringing them into this big venues, all of the new rappers had these glossed out trailers that they were sitting in, and they had them sitting in tents. At Yankee Stadium, they had Kool Herc in a goddamn tent, while all of the rappers, the glossy ones, had these trailers with champagne. Yeah, all of that shit going on that had nothing to do with nothing. And then there are those over the last 30 years who have got in bed with corporations and created a way of life for them, who don't care nothing about our history, who don't care nothing about the foundation, who don't understand we are in a spiritual war. And these components are our gift to spiritually align ourselves. They got us looking left. So our corporations co-opt it, get in front of it, put their name on it, suck all the energy. Now watch this. By next week, you ain't gonna hear nothing about this 50th anniversary. It's gone. It's over. It's done. We've made our money. We gave you a hero that said he started it, and then, but we own everything else and party on. And that's just how it looks. I'm gonna say more harmful than great. You have to be of a certain mindset, like Adika said, to appreciate, all of the small little pieces, because we understand where this came from, and we understand we are at war. But for those who are just partying, having a great time, who made some money, who could truly care less, you know what I mean?
You know what? I also want to add. add to what Black Dot was saying about corporations and the media and their impact on this entire conversation, because what I've noticed over the last few years is particularly when people, because I'm of Jamaican descent. My mother and father are Jamaican. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. But as a journalist and as somebody who's been in, different forms of, like Jamaican culture, reggae, dancehall, all of that, I've personally, as a journalist, I've interviewed and had conversations with the elders who laid a foundation for what you would call dancehall music. And I've had multiple conversations with Kool Herc, as a journalist. So what I've gathered from my personal experience is that I look at what's said in the corporate media, and then I look at what's said in the conversations that I've had with people. People often reference Busta Rhymes when they're talking about the impact of Jamaica on the culture. And I personally, from my research and my experience, I think that Jamaica has had an indelible impact on hip hop culture as a whole. I think that those contributions hip hop would not be what it is now were it not for those contributions. But the thing that I kind of take issue with is the fact that Busta Rhymes continues to be the person that people reference when talking about that history as though he's an authority. When the people that I spoke to, who were actually adults making music in the 60s and 70s in Jamaica, maybe even the late 50s, Busta Rhymes was like a little kid, or he wasn't even born yet. So I'm getting the information directly from the source. Like Busta Rhymes is, not that much older than me. He's probably in his 50s now or whatever. So the brothers that I spoke to, what they've said is that, and including Kool Herc, what Kool Herc told me in my interview with him was that he noticed that when he was playing music from his home, I think he's from Trenchtown, just like Bob Marley. I might be wrong on that, but I'm almost certain. People were not feeling the music from Jamaica that he was playing, but he already had a love for people like James Brown. So what he did is they don't want to hear what I was listening to back home. Let me play what is hot here. And he adapted his style. But even when he was on the island in Jamaica, there were people who were toasting, who were doing rhymes over music and all of that type of stuff there. But when he tried to bring that formula in terms of the instrumentals and the actual music that was used back there, he wasn't connecting, because they was I don't want to hear none of that shit. Turn off that coconut music. I don't want to hear none of that. So he adapted and he attempted to find a way where he can connect with his American peers, and eventually he found a way to do a good job of that. But I've talking to people like Mikey Jarrett, Brigadier Jerry, people from dancehall that a lot of people who into dancehall probably never even heard of. And these are guys going back to the 70s and 80s. And if you talk to them, they'll be like, oh man, yo, we love Cab Calloway. Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, they loved Curtis Mayfield of the Impressions. So when people in the mainstream media put these people out there who are of Jamaican descent and they try to make it seem as though Jamaicans are saying that, oh, we're the ones who only brought this thing that you call hip hop and everybody followed after us. That's not what the elders in Jamaica are saying, though. The elders in Jamaica have always been saying that it was a Pan-African effort where we all contributed elements to the cultivation and development of the music that makes it beautiful. Like when you hear Slick Rick say, he's rhyming, and then in the middle of his rhyme, he just breaks out into a song. It's all because of you. Like they was doing that back in Jamaica. Now, that's not to say that people in Jamaica invented it. I'm sure that there are people in Mississippi who are doing similar things too. There's a song by Lucille Bogan, who's a blues singer from, I'm not exactly sure what part of the South she's in. She might be from Alabama or Mississippi. She has a song called Shave 'Em Dry. And it's the content of the song and the lyrics is very much like what you might hear from mid to late 90s Foxy Brown or Little Kim, where she's being very explicit and she's prominent. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these things are not new. They're just new, a new veneer to it, a new packaging of it as you're adding on like newer instrumentals. Whereas back then they might have used the blues. More recently, you might use funk or what have you, or different other forms of music. But I think, like I said earlier, what makes hip hop powerful is that you don't have it in its modern context without the efforts of all of these different Black people. You don't have it without Black Americans from North America. You don't have it without people from the Caribbean. And even when you look at the concept of a foundational Black American and what that is, if you look at Jack D. Forbes's book, Black Africans and Native Americans, he tells you, and you can verify this through original source documents, that there were a lot of indigenous Black people, what you would call Black people, who are indigenous to North America, who are living in North and South Carolina, who are taking as slaves to the Caribbean, right? To places like Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad. This is an actual fact. This is a history that a lot of people don't talk about. So if you even have a person like Kool Herc who comes to the Bronx, New York, who's to say that he is not a descendant of those original indigenous people who were taken from this North American landmass, brought to Jamaica, and then came back? So it really forces us through the facts, not our opinions, not our feelings, but the facts, to re-examine and redefine what is meant by a foundational Black American when we understand that this is in fact what happened. You know what I mean? We've all contributed to the cultivation and development of hip hop, and I think that couching it in a Pan-African context as a successful expression of the ideologies of Pan-Africanism, I think if we look at hip hop as that, then it allows us to pick up the conversation from a point that we need to and take things, even further. And, that's my whole take on it in a nutshell.
Hey, Sincere, that's dope. Like,
real quick, because I don't know how much time my brother got left with us. I know you said your time was limited. So I want to hear Dewan Cook. But before we do that, I want to give you the opportunity to plug your book, whatever that you got going on, let people know where they can follow you and stuff like that.
No doubt. I got my book here, The Homie and Modern Homie, A Black American's Travels Through the Land of Odum. So, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And, through research, like I've always had a very strong appreciation for Vodun culture. And it comes in multiple facets as I explore in the book. You have Haitian Vodun, which is it's different from what you have in Benin. And then you have the Vodun culture in Louisiana. New Orleans. So you have like these three different expressions, but a lot of it comes from West Africa, particularly amongst the Fan, the Ewe, and other ethnic groups in West Africa between Togo, Benin, and Ghana. So I feel a pretty good job of like pretty much documenting the history. I talk about my personal experiences, and I give like some historical backdrop about the culture that, you know, shows that it in its own way is a form of hip hop in and of itself, because it's a very open-ended culture. And what was Vodun back in the 1800s is not Vodun today. And what it will be 200 years from now isn't what it is now. Like, it's something that's continually adapting, continually redefining itself, and taking influences from different places. So just as, you know, RZA can sample classical music from medieval Europe, Vodun culture might pull things from Hindu culture or cultures from other parts of Africa, integrate it into itself and create something new. So through this book, you know, like I show and improve through my conversations and, you know, accurate historical data that we're doing what we've been doing, you know, and people can put new names on it. They can say that it's hip hop or whatever. We need to, you know, sometimes use terms just as a reference point so that everybody has a common understanding of the terms being used, and we can have an actual dialogue and conversation. But we've always been doing this, and we're going to continue to do it because it's just an expression of who we are as a people. You know, you can take a person from Nigeria, you can take a person who's Gullah Geechee down south, you can take a person from Jamaica. Which one of us don't like fried fish? Which one of us don't like drum bass? Which one of us don't appreciate a corpulent woman with a small waist and a big butt and thick legs? You know what I mean? There's certain things that unify us as a people, and it's good to highlight these things that we have in common, as opposed to highlighting the differences and recognizing the fact that there are corporations like a BlackRock, like Charles Schwab, who have interests in these entertainment companies. And while they're funding these entertainment companies, they're also building privatized prisons. So they have an interest in creating this squabble between the authentic people who really love and are down for the culture. So it's like, have this one distracted by saying, oh, hip hop is 50-50 Latino and black. Hip hop came from Jamaicans and everybody else is a follower. Like, people they put all of these people out to create like a distraction. So like, while everybody's arguing in these little conversations, these people are taking the culture that we created and we contributed towards, and they're making it a bitch and a hole for capitalism. And we just got to address that.
All right, one last thing before I let you go. I just want to know, because I appreciate a lot of what you're saying here, a lot of what you're breaking down here. And I'm looking at the chat, I knew that your perspective would cause some agitation as well, but that's neither here nor there. Mm-hmm. But do you understand the motivation or the reasoning behind us as foundational Black Americans beginning to make this distinction? Or do you just feel like this is something that's being manipulated from the outside?
I think that there are people who identify as foundational Black American who want to make sure that the contributions that not only they, but their ancestors made that help to create a culture that they love and enjoy and have been able to make a living off of is preserved and is acknowledged to be something that they contributed towards making. Like, me as a Jamaican, like, I wouldn't want somebody to come along from some white dude from England and say, oh, we created reggae, we created dancehall. I'm gonna have something to say about that. So I can definitely identify in terms of the idea of what a person who may identify as foundational Black American or ADOS, they might say about not wanting to have culture that they unequivocally had a role in contributing and cultivating and developing. I could understand why you would not want other people to take credit for something that you know that you contributed to. So I understand it from that aspect. I think that there might be other people who are not as responsible, who might have other agendas, but I don't believe that any of those people are here. So I'm talking to my brothers who I believe are responsible intellectuals who have different perspectives that contribute to the whole picture of this whole puzzle that's been fractured and been made to be confusing. But like I said, we've all contributed, and but yeah, I do understand where some people might be coming from in terms of their frustrations.
All right. Thank you for that, brother. I appreciate you, adding on to this build. And if you
Indeed.
still got time, stick around if you got to go.
I got about another 10 more minutes.
All right, cool. Anything you want to say, Duane B? Anything you want to say right now? I don't hear you. Oh, you muted. You muted, brother.
Got it. My bad. I was over here, had it muted. No, yeah. Because I was gonna make clear because I appreciate everybody, because everybody has my perspective. I come from 25 years working with children here, in South Central LA. And one of the big issues we have as a people is Black Americans in North America, and this is a real diaspora, right, is lack of cultural confidence. So if we don't have any kind of cultural esteem in a lot of ways. And that's targeted because everything you do that's great has to be shared. When everything you do bad is on you. We had to, even to this day, when they say the story of jazz, they say, okay, it was cultural contributions of Europeans from in New Orleans, but no one could tell me the European who made a contribution or created anything. They just say it's Europeans. But I can literally, so now we're seeing the same thing with hip hop. Well, Busta Rhymes is sort of a spark, but it's the overall narrative of itself of to begin with when it comes to what hip hop is. And I can understand how it can be misperceived because we as Black people, we share a cultural continuity across the diaspora. There's certain things culturally, whether you're Black in Jamaica, Black in Nigeria, Black in England, you're going to share, and that rhythm is one of them. You're going to share that. But within that environment, everyone created their own thing within that. And so when I talk about, hip hop being 100% Black American thing, it's not so much as Buster. It's that because, yes, these elements may have existed in other cultures too. I'm sure they have because the intracontinental slave trade was bigger than the intercontinental slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
But these things, this ship was leaving regardless of anybody came here. This was already something that it was already, and it has been in. These elements are in all of our forms of music. They're in bebop. All of these elements, it's just when it comes to the hip hop, that's what was done. You have hip hop of New York of the 70s. I had a phone conversation with Too Short last week, and we were talking about West Coast hip hop in the late 70s and the 80s. And here on the West Coast, it's only Black Americans. It's not as mixed when it comes to other people. It's only us. We couldn't look to the left or to the right to find anybody from any other culture to grab anything from. There was no internet. So what you see is, and this goes back to my anthropological background, because my minor in college was in cultural anthropology, how to source culture and trace cultural migrations. So what you see in hip hop is, okay, the spark was in New York, but within a couple of years, it was in LA, it was in Atlanta, it was in Dallas, it was in Houston, it was in Seattle, it was nationwide within a couple of years. To this day, you don't have it in other parts of the world. So that right there, anthropologically, when we trace it, we can ground it to North America because until for the first 30 years this organism existed, it didn't exist anywhere outside of North America. So when you trace it with all the points, you trace some things back to New York, but where did New York get it from? When it comes to park parties, they were doing that on camera in Philadelphia in the 60s. You know what I mean? What comes out of South Carolina, North Carolina, the people who migrated from New York. What I'm saying is, and I don't want to be too wordy, what I'm saying is it's a very, very deep thing. And then that's why like my documentary is going to be a 6-part series, most likely 4 to 6-part series, because it can't be explained on a surface level. You got to see a 200 or 300 year cultural pattern developing consistently, whether I'm talking about ragtime, Zydeco, hip hop, house, techno. You see this thing. And my final thing is this: why am I doing this? I'm doing this, like I said, like and this is how I started it. Too many black children have been told that they haven't invented anything, yet we haven't done anything. If I tell a black person, hey, you invented the mathematics to go into space, they don't see that. If I tell a black person, you invented the real McCoy and you invented the telegraph and all those great things, Granville, they don't see that. But they all listen to music. So if I could tell my children who are the most marginalized in my 25 plus years working here in South Central LA, who don't have anything positive they know about themselves other than Michael Jordan was the greatest player of all time, Martin Luther King freed us, and we used to be slaves. That's all they know about themselves. So if I can take the medium that they distinctly created and use that to raise a cultural confidence within my people, that's what I need to do. And with that, let's learn other people and let's everyone learn themselves. And then as everyone learns themselves, we can see who contributed what, but we must always define the line between contribution and creation. Because when it comes to creation and these things that we call hip hop and we call music, there was no contribution. There was purely creation. Like it didn't exist before this person came at this time and did it. And then from there, people found their own way to do with it. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think everybody that contributed should be acknowledged. I think all cultural contributions should be acknowledged. But for historical sake, for the record, and also for the confidence of my people, I think that they must have something that they have on their own, because when it comes to the crime and the poverty and the baby mama shit, we got to carry that on our own.
Understood.
And I'd like to add on to that. I'm from a different region of the country. And so to be around only your people, I wasn't afforded an opportunity. Growing up in the Bronx, I had Puerto Ricans and Jamaicans and what we didn't do during that time, just keeping it a bean, we didn't really do a lot of distinguishing because we were all poor. We were all living in project buildings, just trying to survive. Two best friends was my Jamaican buddies who, you know what I'm saying, they taught me soccer, I taught them, basketball, and, you know what I'm saying, they did their music, I did mine, and we found a common ground within those areas. So me being only able to hit the timeline in 1977 and 78 is the one reason I try to shy away from the historical aspect of the origins of the culture. I get asked all the time, Dot, what about the history of hip hop? I say, no, I deal with more of the mysteries of hip hop, which came about due to the circumstance because I was not old enough to be able to say beyond a certain of a doubt who was here and who was there. From when I was there, again, this is 5 years after, I'm doing this in parentheses, of the start. We know Smokey and the Lockatrons came out in 1970. We know King Mario was doing jams in 1971. We know there's other aspects to people who were playing records. And I want to add this into the conversation from a creative standpoint. When Grandmaster Flash figured out the cross-fader secrets of cueing the next record and then cutting became a staple in hip-hop. But again, he didn't start two turntables because he was carrying records for goddamn Smokey, and nobody want to talk about that. You know what I'm saying? So we have to throw that into when Grand Wizard is given credit for the actual scratch. That, you know what I'm saying, is an extension of the cut, and this thing kind of moved along. When Africa Bambaataa is given credit for the being the master of records, but he didn't produce those records. He just collected those records. And so you get to see when we speak about the pillars of this conversation does run deep and requires an extensive breakdown. But I'm from a part of New York where we didn't distinguish between, I had Latino brothers and sisters. So when I hear other places say it was about us and we had to fight them, I understand, but I don't understand. So, and that becomes a part of the demographics of where you at. Now, everyone held on to their culture. You know what I mean? Push came to shove, you held on. You knew you was black, or you knew your people were Spanish, or the Jamaicans who stayed in a certain part, and you know what I'm saying, created. So we understood that. And then music came, and this music began to fuse us all on a union to try to get out of goddamn poverty. You know what I mean? So I remove myself from the conversation from a historical perspective, because the ones who know for sure are still here. And, you know, they'll be the ones who tell you firsthand, no, there was none of this. There was none of that. There was this. I can only speak 5 to 10 years into the culture, which is like a goddamn lifetime in terms of how many people can contribute and add on to what was going on. So I think all of it is important. I think it's important to lay it out. And the main thing that bothers me is that we don't own it. And so that's a conversation for another day. Goddamn, who created it? We don't own it. So it's all going to lead back to culture vultures in that aspect. And after 50 years, if that's the time they want to use, I look at it and go, damn, 50 years, we don't own this thing. We've been through many stages. When do we begin to clear it out, grab ownership? So after I explain to the young people what they've contributed, I go, here's your inheritance. You now own it.
Word.
Man.
How many billionaires in hip hop?
What, 2, maybe?
How many rich Europeans are in hip hop? Unlimited billionaires. You know what I mean? And so these are conversations that we are going to have, again, once this stuff is laid out, so we know, okay, yeah, empower you. That's why I don't teach kids slavery, that their history started with slavery. I go, dude, don't start there, because now you're creating victim consciousness. Have a history beyond that. That's a small, that's a drop in your total story. And so, like when Duane said, all they know is Dr. King and Michael Jordan and slavery. You know what I mean? It is a tragedy amongst our people. So let's not do ourselves a disservice. So if you love hip hop, learn hip hop. Don't just you know what I mean? Learn it and then go, okay, now that I learn it and it belongs to me, fuck, I'm coming for what's mine. And that's what we want to spark. For us, it's pretty much, you know, the train has left the station. The day after young minds, because they know the young minds is coming for what's theirs. But if they don't know it's theirs, they can't come for it. So I'm more with empowering and saying, it's yours. The niggas over there got your shit, son. Go get your shit, son. Word, right? They got my shit. Throw a battery in their back. Go get your shit. And hopefully in 60 years or 70 years, whatever they celebrate, we can finally say, man, we this is ours now. It's economic, social, political, spiritual, cultural abilities all belong to us. And I'm hoping that that's what the end story will be.
You know what I think about, because I like that conversation about the ownership of hip hop, and we understand the context of the environment that we live in that snatches ownership, you know, through whatever means these people snatch. So within that, we always got to acknowledge, and that's why this hip hop conversation has to get so broad, so much broader than it is right now, because when you isolate it to one region, even though that region may have sparked it, it doesn't tell the full story. Look,
absolutely,
New Orleans sparked jazz. But New Orleans is not the story of jazz. You have Kansas City jazz, you got Memphis jazz, you got LA style, the cool jazz, birth of the cool. Jelly Roll Morton came out to LA in 1911 and bought the property on the corner of 11th Street and Central Avenue. You can go to it today. And he played jazz as a speakeasy downstairs and pimped upstairs. So even the culture of pimping and street life came from New Orleans to LA through Jelly Roll Morton. You know what I mean? So, you know, Central Avenue. So why am I saying all this? I'm saying this to say that within the greater story, there are other stories where ownership does exist. And hip hop always leaves out the Bay Area. And it's so disrespectful. And that's why I was saying, like, off time hip hop don't respect, not only does it not respect its ancestors sometimes, it doesn't respect its brothers across the country. And in the Bay, they were like, okay, the reason why the Bay Area is the way it is, they never cared about giving it to white folks. I mean, Too Short was selling millions out of his trunk in 1985.
Yeah.
You know, E40 in the 80s here in the Bay Area, we were making MC Hammer, E40. That's $3 million that was made out the trunk because of hip hop. So if you decide to go mainstream, no, you don't own it. But if you just hip hop also provided an opportunity with this cheaper way of recording. See, my father-in-law, Mr. James Carmichael, he's and that's why this is blood when I talk music. You know what I mean? He's the composer of Michael Jackson's Dancing Machine, anything Lionel Richie, anything Atlantic Star, most of your Motown stuff. He wrote that by pencil and paper. You know, those grand, beautiful arrangements. You dig what I'm saying? This is culture we talking about here. But I remember I asked him a question about when he did the song All Night Long with Lionel Richie. Do you know he had to pull in over 100 musicians to pull that song off? Because just say this drummer don't work, I got to call in another drummer. We got a 32-piece string arrangement. We have all of these other flowery sounds, ear candy that go. It's expensive as hell to make genuine R&B. And that's a whole other story about how hip-hop never killed off R&B. The industry killed off R&B for the benefit of hip-hop. But that's a whole nother story. That was all, that's backstory, you know. So when I talk about the impact of hip-hop, I'd be like, now look here, these white folks chose you because you were cheaper to make. So anyway, what happened was we had these, when you come to those string horn arrangements and all that stuff, that's expensive. So hip-hop allows you to sample something or create something in a home studio and then put it on a track and record right away. Now I don't need tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to sell. I can go on my Too Short, used to go to the street hustlers in Oakland and write a rap about them hustling on their corner and mention their corner and sell it. And everybody on that corner wanted to buy that tape. You go to the street hustler on another corner, write a rap about his corner. So hip hop provided an opportunity for great artists who not have the money to record stuff, to record it on their own and self-distribute it. Now the black folks who decided to sign with someone, that's where the money went. But for your E40s, you got to remember, Master P came to the Bay Area to study before he went to back down to New Orleans to do No Limit. That's Bay Area game that he got. Here in LA, the NWA was selling out the trunk before it went nationwide. And then when it went nationwide, I hear other people across the country saying, oh, NWA just brought that stuff, that gangster stuff. And I asked people, were you listening? Did you hear the word gun, or did you listen to the context in which he was speaking about the gun? Because I lived in that here. I lived in that reality in Los Angeles, California, back in the 80s, seeing my neighbor's house get run through by a damn tank by the LAPD, only for it to be the wrong house. It creates something within the music. And instead of a lot of people listening to what was going on, they judged it. And then the corporations, and then when Eazy decided to put it in Jerry Heller's hand, again, going to them, it became something else. So we got to look at, on one hand, we don't own it when we choose not to own it. Now, I get it; those checks are big, but it's still a choice because we've seen other people who've taken hip hop, a very cheap form of music to make relative to rhythm and blues and other sounds, and keep it in house and own it. Tech Nine, you know what I mean? These people do exist. So my thing, I put into the consciousness of the young artists, because everything I do is about going into the consciousness of the 9-year-old who's going to be recording music in the next sometimes 6-7 years. You know, understand the value of what you're creating. Understand that if it sounds crazy, uniquely different than everything else, that it's probably gold. Own it and control it. Because when you decide to sign that on that dotted line, they now own it. But it's a decision. You got to keep that as a decision, and let all artists know we can't keep playing woe is me. They were doing this in the 50s. They were doing this in the 40s. They were doing this in the 30s. You can't keep signing with them playing woe is me. At some point, you got to wake up and say, hey, who's the problem? Is it me or them? And if you do sign with them, make sure that thing is on the up and up, or do like Nipsey did and say no. Because that's the thing with us here in LA. If it ain't right, Ice Cube, what did he say? $50,000? No. LA, I'm an LA cat. We'll say fuck you real fast and do it on our own. And that's something that hip hop, when you celebrate the totality of hip hop, you get that story. But if you keep it buckled down to one region, you just get a limited perspective on the grandiose thing that this thing is.
And that's why I'm glad that we here having this very nuanced conversation with various perspectives. I need people to understand. I didn't want to hold this platform. I didn't want to hold this panel to create an echo chamber. You know what I'm saying? Where everybody just has the same exact point for point perspective on things. Iron sharpen iron, steel sharpen steel. We here to bring truth to light. You know what I'm saying? And speak truth to power. And so everybody's perspective is valid. And I'm learning a lot here today. And I'm being able to reconcile some of my own stuff because I've been torn about enjoying some of this hip hop 50 celebration. I like some of the stuff I've been seeing. I was looking at some of the performance and all that. Snoop Dogg, you know, rocking with Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick and all that. That was dope. You know what I mean? Nas bringing out Lauryn Hill. You know what I'm saying? All of that stuff. Even parts of the Fat Joe set that I saw was good. You know what I'm saying? And so I've been torn between enjoying that and also being upset about some of the false narratives and the lies that's been told. But this conversation right here has helped me reconcile some of that and understand that it's a very nuanced thing and everything has its place. It just needs to be put in perspective. And so that's why we have to have these conversations and continue to have these conversations. I wanted to have one other brother up here with us, our brother Siddiqui Bakari. And so I'm going to continue to hold panels like this on my platform so that we can continue to, flesh out this conversation so that people can really get a deep understanding of what this is all about. It's not just one way or the other. It's not just black and white. There's a lot of different details that go into telling this history and what the essence of hip hop really is. Anything you want to add?
Especially something that is 50 years old. And so we have enough data now to see that it's moved multiple, channels and extremes and, ownership to some artists just wanting fame. They don't want fortune because fortune was already being established, coming out the trunk and independent. But the fame is a whole different animal altogether. And so 50 years is enough data for us now to have these conversations and have enough information where we can study trends, we can see where it's come from, and we can kind of pretty much see where it's going.
Yeah, Dika, anything you want to add right now?
Nah, man. I mean, I'm just like really glad that we were able to have this conversation. I know I said I was only able to do an hour, but conversation is so compelling, man. Like I had to yeah, I had to just send a text message like, yo, I'm gonna be late. But yeah, man, I mean, what Dwan B, Black Dot, as always, sincere love. Like, it's just been a great conversation, and I want to continue to see great conversations like this. Like Sincere Love said, it's good that we don't just have these echo chamber conversations, that we have like perspectives from different people and we maturely and respectfully engage. And it's really a gift to the people, and that's what we do this for. So this has been great.
I like the conversation, and for the people, I like having these conversations because there's mass confusion. But I think what we find is this: the reason why there's confusion is because there's an extremely deep cultural continuity between Black Americans and Jamaicans. Things that you guys been doing on that island for 100+ years, and things we've been doing over here. You mentioned earlier about the Jamaicans that was taken. What about the Jamaicans that was taken from the Indiana central Midwest area in the 1820s? Over 100,000 Blacks were taken out of the Midwest and shipped to Jamaica, And then at the end of the day, we all still Black. We all still come. We all have or have been under the most horrific bullshit the last 500-600 years. The Jamaicans, a lot of them are Britons, if you want to go that far, and that's a whole nother story when we talk about where that comes from.
Talking about the Britons.
Within that, I can understand how a group of people could say, "Hey, look, no, we brought that." I get it because it's you. You ain't lying. You ain't faking. Your grandmama did do that. Your granddad, but my granddaddy did too. And so what happens is, in the conversation, when like our brother Dika said, when somebody like a Busta Rhymes put out there to tell the conversation, what it does is it starts a fight. And I get the fight. Fighting is necessary sometimes, but sometimes once you fight, you gotta say, okay, what are we finished fighting about? And then I can say, my grandmama did that. You can say your grandmama did that. And then from there, we can start asking more questions. So what other things are we more interrelated like? Yes, as I'm going to still own my cultural heritage, just like you should still own your cultural heritage. Because out of ownership of both, we can then build on top of that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, understanding that where the confusion is coming from and who's causing the confusion. And don't allow that confusion to totally crap on your brother because he's saying something that ruffles your feathers initially. Okay, we'll get your feathers ruffled, cool. Now, when you're done crying your tears, ask yourself, what am I crying over? And what can we learn from this? Because I'm telling you right now, most of what I understand about music and intercultural is because I had to ask. I had to find out. It wasn't because I just said, oh, we black, we the greatest, huh? Like, no, I love Sergio Mendes, so I studied them. You know what I mean? I love Bill, I love the Wailers, so I studied them. You know what I mean? And so when you see that, you really do get to see that we have our own different things, but there is a lot that we have shared. And through these conversations, we can see that we can all maintain respect for one another because we all have something that we have as a culture that we bring.
Indeed.
Peace.
We all have our own uniqueness, things that distinguish us as well. At the end of the day, we are one people at the end of the day, but we have our different ethnic groups and, cultural idioms and things of that nature. But the thing, both of y'all have mentioned about some of the parts of the slave trade that went from here to the Caribbean and vice versa. I just want to add to that as far as when we talk about foundational Black Americans, if a person was sold from a Caribbean plantation to an American plantation during antebellum slavery, that person's predecessors, the people that came after that, it's called the predecessors, right?
Before.
Descendants is after, predecessors before.
Predecessors are before.
That person's descendants, right? That person's descendants who are here now are what we consider foundational Black Americans because they are part of the foundation of the United States of America. Foundational Black American is not a race. It has nothing to do with your biology or anything like that, right? It's a cultural thing that came about from our experience here in the United States of America. And so if a person was sold from a plantation in North Carolina to a plantation in Haiti or Jamaica somewhere, their descendants that are alive today are Jamaicans. They consider themselves Jamaican. You know what I'm saying? They're not a foundational Black American. We all one people, like I started off this thing saying. But culturally, that person is a Jamaican now. You know what I'm saying? And so the people who were here from antebellum slavery who helped build this country, because remember, there was no country until it was built by us. And so the people who were sold here during that time, during that building, their descendants who are alive today are foundational Black Americans. And they were amalgamated in with everybody who was already here anyway, right? So that's just the way that works. I just wanted to clear that up a little bit because I don't want people thinking that person, the people who are alive today who might have came from one of those people who were sold from a Jamaican plantation or whatever is a Jamaican today. That's just, it doesn't make sense. What is a Jamaican? You know what I'm saying? It's based on a cultural history. It was formed throughout the years. You know, we all go back to the same timeline. When you talk about people who are indigenous to North America, that's not just relegated to the United States of America. When you talk about North America, you're still talking about the Caribbean. You're still talking about even Mexico and Canada and all of that. The people who are already here, indigenous people who are already here before the Europeans came, are part of that lineage, right? We have those things in common with people who are from the Caribbean. They are an amalgamation of people who were brought here through the slave trade and people who are already here, people who are indigenous to the land there. That's the same thing that we have in common here. There were people who were already indigenous to this land, and then there were people who were brought here through the slave trade. That amalgamation is what created the different cultural expressions that we see today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's something that has to be acknowledged because in anthropology, when cultures are shifting, when you're talking about shifts and you want to talk about influence cultures have, if you want to be looked at, you know, as far as in a physical peer-reviewed paper, you gotta give at least 3 to 5 points of references, names, dates, you know, and different things that you reference. And you have to show how that entity, that organism existed, where these people were and how it transferred to where they went. Why did I say this? the reason why culture is so important, because culture is an adaptation to what you're going through in your environment. Because within being one, we're foundational Black Americans. Two, me being from Los Angeles, and I'm one of those rare Angelinos who my family's been here since the 1930s. So I'm like, I've been here for almost 100 years. You know what I mean? So how I operate is culturally different than my cousins in Texas, because the LAPD, the way they get down is way different than the way. So the way I behave and operate has to move. I have to adapt to my circumstances. And in the United States of America, the black people who were here in 1865, 1870, 1890, 1830, you know, we adapted and we interact with white society in different ways. You know what I mean? Then because we were here in the belly of the beast, and the way we act, the way we do our music. Well, I interviewed Mr. Bobby Rush. He talked about the diddley bow, a guitar that it was Bo Diddley named himself Bo Diddley after diddley bow, a piece of haywire, a wood block, and a can. You know what I mean? Our music came out of us not having things and picking stuff up around the farm and making instruments. And it's just something we were doing in the church, minding our own damn business. Now that is good, is it cool that I say, okay, now let's make it flat for everybody to come enjoy? Yes, we want everybody to enjoy, but the people who made that music out of this unique experience, that has to have its own conversation that's separate from a conversation. And that's only out of respect for the people who went through that experience.
Absolutely. 100%. You muted, Black Dot. You might be muted.
I said I have to bounce. I'm late for another interview. You know how this thing goes. And so, you know, I appreciate this conversation. I appreciate you all and your perspectives, and we'll build again soon. Peace.
Appreciate you, man. You still good on time, Adiga?
5 more minutes.
All right, add what you want to add.
Man. So again, thank you for like having me on the show. It's been a great build. I look forward to more builds like this, because like Dwan B was saying, like, this is a very nuanced conversation, and it's impossible to cover all of the spots in just an hour and a half. But I'm glad we had it nevertheless. Anybody wants to build and see whatever else I might be doing, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Adika Butler, and I'm also on Facebook, Adika Butler. So you can find me there. My book, The Homie and Modern the Homie, you can find that at mindglowbooks.com. I'm an independent author. Like, I published this myself. You can't get my book on Amazon. You got to come directly through me. I don't want Jeff Bezos getting any money off of my book. So, so that's how it is. And thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it. This was dope.
No doubt. And Dwan, before I let you go, you gotta tie in that card thing, man. Where you was going with that?
Peace,
I'm also a cardologer. Hip hop. If I spell the word hip hop, it comes out to the 7 of clubs, and 7 of clubs. That's the card of resistance. That's the card of the lawyer. It's a card of I'm fighting back. I'm using my words. I'm using anything I can throw at your ass, and that's what. Even though all black music, even though all of our music is resistance based music, hip hop, with it being a 7 of clubs, that's a card of the guide. It's the card of hard work, and hip hop had to work real hard, because remember, we got to understand that hip hop is something that wasn't considered music for 30 years. Right. They really start considering music. Let's tell the truth. The first half of hip hop's life, it even wasn't considered music. You know what I mean? And so it's a hard working thing. And so when I talk about it from that point of view, like to say from the card point of view, you can identify a lot through the card that it has. And the 7 of clubs is all about fighting. And hip hop has never been allowed to rest. If you think about it, hey, can you ever think of a moment where hip hop could just chill without any kind of an attack on it? On the one hand, it was always, this is animal music, it's bad music, it's this, it's that. It's always been a fight. Hip hop could never just be. And then when it finally got to the point to where the mainstream accepted it, now it was created by everybody else except black people. It's always been that, you know what I mean? And so when I look at it from that point of view, just to me, I look at it as maybe that's just the assignment of hip hop. Because when I look at hip hop is the bow, it's the period, the final conclusion paragraph to a beautifully written essay of 100 years of recorded Black American music. It ties it all in together, from the samples to everything that it brought together. It brought in all those elements that we have and sort of just did this to it, you know? So with hip hop being a 7 of clubs, that's just his purpose. His purpose is to come in and really ruffle feathers and really make you, and it's not pretty. You know what I mean? Hip hop isn't for, you know, I'm talking about at its authentic level. I ain't talking about this bullshit that they have on the radio. I'm talking about authentically. You know what I mean? Hip hop is a true 7 of clubs. It's a card of war, you know? And so we got to understand that, you know, everything plays out its own cards. And like, I'm a certified cardologer. I also teach cardology for people who want to learn how to read playing cards. But yeah, I look at things when I looked at it from the cards perspective, and I was like, really, one day I was just really frustrated with this whole Fat Joe situation. And then when I put the card on it last week, just thinking like, okay, what's going on with hip hop? And then when I pulled that card, I was like, okay, I get it. I get it. This is some shit that's came here to just shuffle everything up. And pretty soon it's going to be gone. Hip hop ain't going to be here forever.
And that really makes sense when you think about it, because hip hop took from everything. Hip hop, when we talk about rap music, I would just say rap music is not its own unique thing. It borrows from everything. You know what I'm saying?
And that's why we were going back and forth over who started it in this. If you think about it, it's the only one we really arguing it since recorded music. Of course, there's arguments before recorded music, but since recorded music started, you can be like, you can easily define. No, Louis Armstrong did this to the trumpet and vocally to change jazz. Then you can get, it's a cleared Fats Waller brought in popular stride style piano music. Ike Turner recorded the first rock and roll album. You can literally James Brown funk. You know what I mean? You can go Barry White, first recorded in 1967, re-recorded in 1963, Love's Theme, first disco song. You know, you can really pinpoint when it comes to the other genres of music, who, where, what, when, why, and how. When it comes to what we call hip hop, it's sort of murky. Because it didn't, and the reason why it's murky is because it didn't do anything new. You know, when Barry White came with Love's Theme, that was the first time you heard the 16th notes on the hi-hat there to drive the song. When Gambling Huff came with the Sound of Philadelphia the same year, this is what they call a Soul Train song. Earl Young, the drummer, was the first drummer to put 4 on the floor and had that pulsating do. Before that, you can pick up, go find the CD. You're not going to find the CD with that. They did something different that wasn't done before. When, you know, so all of our other genres, you can pinpoint Larry Graham, Drake's uncle, thump bass, an element that's essential to not only funk and hip hop, but heavy metal too, you know? But when it comes to hip hop, you got the DJs, but you got your people. And so it's already murky. And on top of it being murky, you lie and put Keith Cool Herc ahead of Disco King Mario. You lie and say it started at a park. Well, no, we could get a little more into it if we just dig a little bit deeper. But the reason why it's, again, even if we dig a little deeper, in my opinion, it's so murky, is because it's really an amalgamation of everything. It didn't do anything new. So when you have these birth of hip hop concerts and celebrations, you're celebrating something you're celebrating the birth of something that was already born. You're celebrating Columbus discovering America. You dig what I'm saying? That's what you're essentially doing. You're celebrating Columbus discovering America. And that's why it's so much confusion. So as Black folks, we got to understand this. Whatever level you look at hip hop on, from the music to the dance to the style to the culture to the impact, The reason why I like to always say that you can 100% bring it back to us is because it wasn't our first time doing this to the world. It wasn't our second time doing this to the world in the last 100 years. It wasn't our 5th, 10th, 4th, or 10th time doing this to the world just in the last 100 years. We've done it over and over again. What's that line Jay-Z stole? You say you made Hove, well, make another one. Okay, well, if you made hip hop, make another one.
That's a fact.
We done made another one over and over and over and over and over. Every 5-6 years, we making another one. So we need to take pride in that shit.
No doubt. That's clearly one of the things that makes the argument that it's a unique thing to foundational Black Americans, because we're the only ones that keep inventing stuff over and over again. You don't see that nowhere else. They've been playing the same music in all these other places. They only got one form.
And the only time they have a new wrinkle in their form is after we create it. Now you got a thing called country trap. Country didn't invent trap. We did trap, and then people who like country started.
That's our influence.
Yeah, it's always us. Even when you look at dancehall, the new trap dancehall. You know what I mean? It all starts here, then goes there. That's just what it is. If that offends people, then create something that we want. And it shouldn't offend you. You should be like, okay, cool. Yeah, my people, y'all may have given us that cool, but I like our twist on it. And that's fine. You people like what they like. But give credit to the people who made it. If you like it that much, if you have any kind of self-love and self-care or self-awareness. Because some of the people just don't know. Honestly, when I talked to a couple weeks ago, when I talked to Rakim about some stuff, he texted me this morning. And he just finished watching my pilot to my documentary, and just some stuff he just didn't know. The one thing we got to acknowledge as Black people, we don't pass our information down to our kids. You do. I see what you do with your son. Thank you for switching the narrative. But overall, are you the norm or the exception? Most parents, their kids go to school. How was your grades? Then the parents get on Twitter, and the kids go play Fortnite, and that's it. You know. So we don't pass down information like that. So we look at these MCs as people who's supposed to be representing the culture, when really they was doing music because their parents wasn't talking to them either, or didn't know. Even they did talk to them, they didn't know. So a lot of stuff that just wasn't passed down. So when I talked to him and a few other people, I went into it thinking like I'm like everybody else in the B1 community, where it's like, nah, F this nigga, y'all better represent for the culture. You know, that's how I am. But then when you have a conversation with some of these people, you realize, man, you know what? These are good-hearted people, and a lot of them just don't know.
Hey, that's real. Even some of the ones who are saying things that are offensive to us. And I ain't gonna name no names and try to give nobody no excuse, because they still gonna get that work.
Yeah.
They still gonna get that work. But I really truly see it that way. Most people really don't know. Even when you was talking about just now about the different things that certain artists added to music, where you can clearly say, okay, this person made this contribution. Whereas with hip hop, it's more murky. Most people still don't even understand those things, because the majority of people are casual music listeners. They don't even hear those differences in the music. You know what I'm saying? They don't even hear that. It's just a feeling. They don't even know why they like what they like. You know what I'm saying? That's the majority of people that listen to music. I would say more than 85%, but on average, you say 85% of the people just don't know. They casual listeners. They're not into all of those details like that. And so most people don't know that the history, like you said, is not passed on. We don't have these type of conversations with our children, you know what I'm saying, and all of that. We don't have institutions, which I'm glad they're starting to create some now, but they got to get these myths out of here.
Right.
Institutions to pass this stuff on. You know what I'm saying? Uh-huh. And so that's why I love hearing from you, because you're very knowledgeable on the subject and you're passionate about it, but you're not emotional. I think some of our people are too emotional when it comes to these conversations, and it's just all about sticking your chest out. I'm foundational Black American. That's it. That's all. It's a lot more to it. If we want to be real, we want to really bring truth to power, then you got to understand that the conversation is more nuanced than that.
It is. And you made a good point also about the casual listener. And that's the thing with this whole hip hop 50. They understand that most people just are going to play what's been played. You know what I mean? They're not really listening. You don't know the nuances. And so I really do feel like, because I see this out there, it made me change up how I get down and what I talk about in my content. You know what I mean? Like, okay, a lot of us don't know, and I do. And let me just go ahead and put out there and explain, because maybe that could be my contribution to this big old thing. Everybody got their own lane, you know? I hate when people go around saying, well, this person should talk about this. And no, everybody talks about what needs to be talked about. Everybody talks about what's in their spirit that they need to put in to the overall conversation. You know what I mean? And right now, this is the time that I feel that this music conversation is a great conversation to be had, because that's a one-to-one connection my people can have a cultural pride in, because we hear it every day, you know? And that's another area where I could put on notice people who aren't from our culture. Look, you stepping in what we created. Have some respect. If you didn't know, welcome. Have some respect. If you did know and you don't have any respect for this culture, fuck you. And that's what I want my people to have. If they don't have respect for them, kick their asses out. We don't need anybody here. Like these hip hop niggas be thinking they need it. What the fuck we need Eminem for? Right. But that's what happens when you don't have a strong foundation of what you bring to the table. And then we also got my documentary I'm dropping. It's Bigger Than Hip Hop, the Black American Music Family Tree. Because we got to understand, they're trying to pigeonhole us into hip hop, when hip hop is just a small sector of what we've created in the music that we created in cultures around the world. Hippie culture, the rocker culture, that's black culture. The K-pop culture, black culture. The J-pop culture. J-pop is Japanese pop in the music of the 70s. Black culture. I mean, and it's done time and time. Bossa Nova, Black American. Salsa, Black American. And I can give you the names, dates, and the titles of their songs that they first recorded and put out there, if you want to talk about contribution. So we got to understand that if people want to go around and put everything bad on us, then we about to start collecting receipts of all the things that we did good. And along with my documentary, I'm putting our inventions in this thing too. Because we invented all this stuff too, but the music is a part of it, you know. And then I think through us, we can't fight white supremacy with money right now. We can't fight it with a war machine right now. The only place we can fight the whole thing right now is here, and how we view ourselves and standing up, because they can only be on our back if we bend over. We stand up, they can't fuck with us.
Yes, indeed. And I want to thank everybody who's tuning in on YouTube. Make sure you do all the YouTube stuff, please. Like, share, subscribe to this channel if you're new here. My name is Sincere. This is Sincere of the Godcast. We do stuff like this on a weekly basis, so make sure you stay tapped in with us for that. If you're watching us on Facebook, same thing. Do all the Facebook stuff over there. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, just head on over to YouTube. And some people are listening on the Twitter space too. Shout out to everybody listening on the Twitter spaces.
Oh, we in Twitter space. I forgot about that Twitter space. Yeah. What's up, y'all?
Shout out to the Twitter space. And I know there's probably some people on Twitter who want to get on the mic and add to the conversation. So we're going to end it here on YouTube and continue the conversation for a little while on Twitter to give people an opportunity to add to the conversation based on what they've heard here. But Duane, before I let you go, though, I got to ask you about this shit, man, because we was talking about this on your space the other day with the Eminem and Melly Mel thing. Now, Melly Mel done came out and apologized. I ain't never heard about somebody apologizing for a diss record. This is unprecedented.
You know, the only thing that showed me, and I gotta bounce, but I'm going to come to your Twitter space. It's just not right away. Give me like 20 minutes. I'll be there.
Let me read the apology to you.
Go ahead.
Real quick. He said, in light of the 50th anniversary of hip hop, my original intention was to contribute an engaging and enjoyable endeavor to enrich the cultural landscape. He ain't write this, by the way. But anyway, regrettably, my response fell short in its execution, and I accept full responsibility for the misjudgment. I acknowledge that my perspective was ill-conceived, and I am prepared to take ownership of this oversight. It has become evident that Eminem's dedicated and passionate fan base stands unwaveringly by his side, which is a testament to their genuine admiration and loyalty, a truly commendable aspect. From the onset, I have consistently recognized Eminem's exceptional prowess as an MC without reservation. My unfortunate choice of words, suggesting that his success is solely attributed to the color of his skin, was in no way reflective of my genuine beliefs. It was an attempt, albeit misguided, to engage competitively within the MC sphere.
Don't no nigga that dressed like Dragonfly Jones use words like albeit and regrettably. The only nigga with no sideburns like that ever said regretted. If he didn't regret them sideburns, he's never using the word regrettably. You can tell that was written by some lady named Cindy. Like that. What that shows me is this. It shows me that Eminem has power behind him that's deeper than we understand.
Yeah,
and it ain't Dr. Dre.
Right.
One thing I've been doing lately, and I don't even want to come off like I'm defending Dr. Dre because he doesn't defend Black society, so he can hang on his own. But when people keep coming to me saying that Dre put him on, that's just not true. Jimmy Iovine put him on. When your boss when the person who writes the checks, Jimmy Iovine, walks into your studio with a tape and saying, "Hey, listen to this guy," you know what that means? Turning us into millionaires off his shit. We all got jobs. People be thinking music is different than their own goddamn job. You sitting at work right now, and if your boss come to you, your boss ain't gonna tell you, you must do this file. Your boss just gonna sit that file on your desk and say, "Hey, can you help me out?" They're gonna ask you very nicely, but you know exactly what that means. If you want to keep everything else you got going on, you better do this. So Dre was given an assignment by his boss. Where did Jimmy Iovine come from? How did he get so much access to all these artists like Dr. Dre and all these different people? Who is he?
He's been around for a long time.
We gotta ask people who is like he's just like is he another Clive Davis? We gotta ask these questions. The web goes deep. Usually behind every creation there's a black man. Behind every crime there's a white man. Let's just tell the truth. And so Jimmy Iovine put him on. Now you got Melly Mel apologizing. He apologized for that before he apologized for whooping that woman's ass last month.
I was gonna say the same thing. I ain't heard no apology about that, and I think that got something to do with it.
I think that was he at the Hip Hop 50 celebration yesterday?
I didn't see. I didn't watch the whole thing. Obviously.
I heard he was there. I heard he was there. It was a part of the celebration.
I hope he was there, but I didn't.
Maybe
see
if he, I think that's probably what it took for him to get his VIP pass. I
think it got something to do with that case. They probably said, "Listen, you want us to make that case go away? I'm gonna write this apology for you, and you're gonna post this online."
I can see that, man. It's like, okay, that for me, all that shows me is, yes, I'm disappointed in Melly Mel for apologizing, but I'm looking at the chessboard, not the players.
Not surprised.
And when I look back at the chessboard, my question now goes back to Eminem. Who's behind you, boy? Who behind that boy? Why everybody? So why when Snoop came out and said that Eminem ain't that good, he had to just back. Snoop didn't apologize, but he backed off. Everybody that come out and say something, they got to either apologize or back off. Eminem gets all this rush to love. Oh, people don't want to challenge Eminem, but Eminem has never challenged anybody worth challenging.
Right?
You know what I mean? Who is he? Why is he so coddled? We gotta see that for what it is. And as black folks, there has to be the undeniable proof that the reason why they put him as high as they put him, the reason why he sells as many records as he sells, is because Eminem is their boy. That's what I think about Melly Mel's apology. Further proof that he's their boy.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you again, Duane B. I know you got to run. Like I said, we're going to continue this conversation over at Twitter Spaces. Anybody that's here on YouTube, y'all can head on over to Twitter now. And if you want to add to the conversation, just make a request. My sister Nikki the God is holding it down for us over there. And so I'll be over there with y'all guys for a little while, just so I can give people an opportunity to add on. But I appreciate you. Shout out to Black Dot again. Shout out to Adika Butler again. Like I said, I'm going to try to continue having these type of conversations on the platform. So make sure that y'all subscribe to the channel. Stay tapped in with me. Any last words, Duane B? Anything you got to plug? Anything before you get out of here?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is still suspended for talking about that Alabama ass whooping. So it's suspended till Tuesday. So Tuesday, I'm going to come back with a vengeance, talking big shit about what's going on, with everything going on. I just won't show no video, so I don't get suspended again. Music, shit. My card readings, this is, I'm going to get back doing my readings on my show this week. I was going to do some last week, but I got suspended. Breaking all this down, teaching, and just doing all that stuff, because I like doing a whole bunch of different shit. So go to DewanB.com. People like, Dewan, how you do all that stuff? Go to my website. You see, I got years on all this shit because I get bored fast, man. I get bored fast. After any one particular task more than 4 or 5 hours, I'm on to the next thing, bro. You know, and so that's I do everything like that. So if you want to know more about it, go to DewanB.com. That show you my whole world of all the things that I have going on. I appreciate y'all.
And you got some new live music lounge thing that got coming.
Oh yeah. Me and I don't want to. I will announce it. Me and a special person that y'all don't know. We about to do a live music lounge. In the next sometime I'm just trying to nail down between 1 and 2 different venues. But yeah, we about to bring that. We bringing that LA chic vibe back, where it's live music, live band, live singers. If you're MC, you can come get it off, but it got to be over live band. We ain't playing nobody's tracks. We gonna be going around. We gonna be doing ciphers, music. It's gonna be some dope stuff. So follow me on my IG. Follow me on my website. When it's up, it's up. We gonna be letting y'all know. You know, we have the Hidden History Museum doing our monthly comedy shows. That was packed out last night. We're gonna be doing that again next month. I got go to DewanB.com for updates on all the good stuff, man.
Yes, indeed. And all right, family, we're gonna close out over here on YouTube and Facebook. Appreciate everybody tapping in once again. Always remember, family, we are not the master teachers. We are only the master students and signal boosters for the voices of the new Black media. Peace and Black love.